Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue, and today my favorite After Effects plugin is Universe 2 by Red Giant Software. So, if you are an After Effects user, you are probably very familiar with Red Giant Software. They make a ton of very popular plugins like Shine, and they distribute Magic Bullet Looks and Particular and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, Red Giant is very well known within the After Effects community. But Universe 2 is a little different. One thing that sets it apart, not really sets it apart, but that I'm thankful for, is that all of the effects are now GPU accelerated. So anything that you use, it's not CUDA based, so you don't have to have an NVIDIA card. It'll work with NVIDIA, AMD, even Intel graphics. So it must be using OpenCL or something similar to that. Whatever it is they're using, I'm thankful that they've taken the time to make everything GPU accelerated because it's very interactive. Secondly, Universe 2 employs a subscription model. So let's take a look at my little Red Giant utility here. Here you'll see a bunch of Red Giant plugins that I've purchased and are installed on my system. And you'll see like Trapcode Shine in particular. I have the option to upgrade these, and I haven't for various reasons. Maybe I haven't gotten around to it yet, or maybe I don't, for instance, use Colorista a lot anymore, so I'm not going to upgrade that. So I have the option of I get to keep Colorista, but I can upgrade it if I want to. If I don't, I still get to use the old Colorista. So that's different than subscription, right? So this is what people have an issue with subscription is, you know, you have all of these plugins available to you. So here's all these filters in Universe 2. And in fact, here's all the legacy ones from Universe 1, I believe. A lot of these have been updated to GPU. In fact, I think most of them have. And there's a bunch of new ones as well. So the great thing is you have access to all these, and the annual plan is $100 a year. The deal with subscription is, though, once that if you don't renew, then you can no longer use the plugins. So the value prop is it worth it to pay $100 a year for all of these plugins? And I hope to shed some light on that, I guess, in this video. So that's how it works. Let's take a look at their website really quickly. Looking at the website, we can see that it's compatible with Premiere Pro and After Effects, of course, as well as Final Cut and Motion, if you still use those, if anybody still uses those. Sony Vegas, I guess there's some Vegas users out there still. Also DaVinci, great program, as well as HitFilm. And of course, like I said, the GPU, it'll even work with the lowly Intel GPUs often found on laptops, which is great because you can actually use Red Giant Universe on your laptop and get GPU acceleration. And of course, Mac and PC. One of the great things about Red Giant is I really believe they do a great job supporting their software. So you've got user guides and you can ask questions online, but they have great tutorials. They're really well done. And there's tutorials for just about every single plugin or effect on there on Red Giant Universe 2. So that's the website. So let's jump back over to After Effects. Back in After Effects, let's take a look at the sort of plethora of effects we have with Universe. And I can't show it up here because it cuts off the screen capture. Boo. So let's go over here to the effects and presets list. Let me see if I can make this bigger, slightly bigger. And Universe. So Universe blurs. You can never have too many blurs and you can never have too many glows as far as I'm concerned, because these are staples of the motion graphics and compositing tools, right? Universe Distort. We've got a number of different distortion effects, chromatic aberration. I think I'll show that one in a minute. Heatwave. Now, let's talk about Heatwave for a second, because I had a project where I had to do a 3D desert scene. And I brought it into After Effects thinking, okay, I'm going to have to come up with some sort of blur and distortion and some sort of aberration and create my own heatwave effect. And I took a look at Universe and I'm like, oh, geez, there's a heatwave effect right here. And that happens a lot in Universe because there's so many effects. There's a good chance that what you want is already there. You just don't know it. So take the time to kind of see what's there, because there's something that's going to save you a lot of time that's already in Universe that you are probably going to build yourself if you don't pay attention. The Universe generators, these are all background generators. I'm using one here, gradient ramps and spectrums and turbulences and things like that. Use those a lot. Universe glow, again, a bunch of glows there. Glimmer, point zoom is really cool. I'll show that in a minute. And you can never have too many glows, never have too many glows or blurs. Universe legacy, these are all the legacy ones. Tune, a lot of tune ones and camera shakes and a bunch of stuff in here that I don't think has been GPU accelerated, but it's there if you need it or if you have an older scene that already has these on there. Okay, motion graphics. Again, there's only 3 of them in here, line, logo motion, and HUD components, but they're very powerful, and I'll show all 3 of those. And then stylize, this is another group that I use a lot in Universe, in particular Holomatrix too, has just a ton of different effects in there. And the null light factory, the famous null lens flares, are in here as well, in addition to a bunch of other stuff. And then there's a bunch of transitions, right? If you use Premiere, there's a bunch of stuff in here. I typically don't do transitions in After Effects, but sometimes they're useful just as an effect. And there is a bunch of transitions in there, as well as some utilities like Camera Shake and Fisheye Fixer and some split screen stuff. But like I said, I'm mostly going to be using the stylize, the motion graphics, and the background generators, as well as the blurs and glows. Okay, got that out of the way. Let's take a look at just a couple of these things here, if you're still with me. All right, first things first, let's start with the backdrop here. So the backdrop has a universe effect called Spectralicious on it. And you'll see a lot of presets with the universe effects. So I think, again, Red Giant does a great job supporting their software. Great tutorials, great documentation, great updates, and they have a ton of presets. And presets are really important because, A, it gives you a starting point for your creative endeavor, but it also just helps you understand how the effect works by deconstructing some of these presets here. And some of the, it saves you time and money. And anybody who says presets are lame has never worked under a deadline for a job for a client before. Because if you're under the gun for a client, presets can be your best friend. And it doesn't matter that they're presets. So, in fact, I like this preset right here better than the previous one. So we're going to stick with this, right? We'll stick with Purple Haze. And then I'm going to move on to line. I'll get you in 1 second here. HUD. So HUD is using the HUD Components effect from Universe. And again, we have a number of presets. In fact, actually, let me just reset this. And you'll see, we've got this sort of circle now, sort of a compass style. And we have a number of elements over here. Let me just twirl down the first element. You kind of get an idea of how this is going to work, right? You build up a number of elements and animate them individually to create some sort of cool HUD effect, some sort of heads-up display effect. And this is, you can see there's just a ton of stuff, right? All kinds of, we got rectangles and chevrons and crosshairs and measured arcs and God knows what else. Let's do this crosshair. That's kind of cool looking. And of course, you can animate this guy. Again, we've got some preset animations here. You can see some blinking and moving and twirling. Let's do an orbit 2D on there. And that's going to let our guy spin around. All right, sounds good. You get the idea, right? We can do some cloning as well, which is cool. I'd like maybe 6 clones here, and then offset them maybe with rotations. You can see how that offset is going there. So now they're spinning around like this. Pretty cool, right? We understand how this stuff works. I'm not going to go through all of this stuff, but that's the idea. And again, you have a huge number of presets available. In fact, there's this whole preset browser here that Red Giant uses for a number of the effects. And it's similar to the Mr. Horse preset browser that I looked at in an earlier episode. And it's just so nice to have animated presets in a preset browser. It just lets you browse this stuff really quickly. You see what you're going to get. You don't have to apply something and then create a preview and look at it and then apply something else and create a preview. You just have to mouse over these thumbs. You get something kind of cool, like echoes here. Right? That's pretty cool, right? Offset arcs. I like that. Offset arcs too, even cooler. So let's do, double click that guy, and we've got some offset arcs. And I'm not going to, well, here, I'll do a little preview so we can see what that looks like. Okay, preview's generated, scrubbing through it. So there's some rotations and some noise bouncing around in there, and they're using a number of different elements and animation effects on this. So you kind of get the idea of how these HUD elements work. So you can build things up with all these different elements and combine them with more HUD effects, and you can create some really cool stuff. And there's some great tutorials on the site for that. There's some more plugins here. Let's take a look at Point Zoom. Point Zoom's a cool one, so I'm just going to drag this on my HUD effects here. And then I'm going to move my little point here, and you can see what this is doing, right? It's almost like a projector or one of the old, 80s movies effects when the titles come out. So, but it's really cool, right? It looks good. And you've got some intensity and some other different filters or effect or controls for the effect over here that you can use. So really quickly you can build something that looks pretty cool. In fact, I'm going to let me just right click and do a new solid here. We'll call this flare. And let's add the null flare, right? So I'm going to type in null, my little browser here, and universe, null light factory. There we go. Drag that on here. And again, we have lots of different presets, right? Tons of presets, which is great. I love my presets. Make me work faster so I can play more video games. All right, let's go with this guy. It's pretty cool. And I'll set this dude to add or screen, whatever you prefer. Drop this on here. Hey, look, we're starting to build up some cool motion graphics. So imagine this all animated instead of me going through it and pulsing and spinning and, ooh, that looks cool. Let's make a line. So let's go over to our line. Line is just super useful because the type of work I do, I'm often making mechanism of action animations in 3D, and I have to call out certain elements of, let's say, a server or a medical device or some bit of technology. And so I do a lot of lines. I used to do them all manually using After Effects shapes, and it was a huge pain. It took forever to do. I don't like twirling down a million things to get to the shape components in After Effects. So line is a godsend. In fact, if it was just line, I'd probably spend $100 a year just to use line. And so again, there's all kinds of stuff here. You can do, different shapes on the end, different types of triangles or targets and circles. You can move this stuff around. Let me make this a basic triangle, and we can do like a linear line or an auto curve or a 3-point Bezier. Let's move this down a little bit, and let's sort of work on our, of course, all this stuff can be animated, and we can do, let's do a, I don't know, some sort of gradient along here. So we'll start with a purple and maybe finish with a yellow. What do you say? Maybe yellow? No. Red? Nah. Yeah, sure. Why not red? In fact, for our primary shape color, let's just pick that red there, match it up. And again, you can add, there's different shapes you can put at each end as well. So we can do our point shapes here. Where's my point shape? Secondary line. Oh, you can do a secondary line as well. So there's just a ton of different stuff. So you can have like a dashed secondary line. You can offset that. You can animate that differently. There's a lot of just really, it's really deep, I guess is what I'm saying. Different animations on this guy. We can do, let's do a shape here. So we've got our 0.1 shape. This is our 0.1. So we can put a little ball or something, like a little circle there to initiate our 0.1 shape. Let's find our primary shape color. Oh, or 0.1 shape color. Let's see, 0.1 is the circle. We have a color here. Let's grab our purple. So there, right? And you can, of course, change the opacity of this and animate this stuff on, or the scale, or the size, everything else. And of course, you can animate the entire arrow drawing on with one control, which is great. That control is, can Greg find it? Probably somewhere around here. You can do it. Draw on. There it is. Very aptly named. So you can see how this is going to work, right? So I may animate that point circle coming on, sort of scaling up, and then I'm going to draw this on like that. So, but line is great. In fact, line, honestly, that's just the worst of worth the price of a subscription for me, because I use freaking lines all the time and I hate making them. A couple more things here to show. Let's look at the text here. What is this thing? Indeed, what is this thing? I don't actually like the color of that text. Let me go to text, character, turn this up just a little bit. And go back to my effects here. And let's go down here to universe. Let's take a look at motion graphics. Like I said, there's 3 in here in motion graphics. Logo motion. Drag this guy onto our text here. And where did it go? Drag through the timeline. We'll see it's coming in from the side there. So what is logo motion? Logo motion is similar to a lot of the transitional effects you would have in Mr. Horse. And if you don't have Mr. Horse, it's nice to have these in here in Red Giant Universe. So if I look at logo motion here, again, a bunch of presets, animated preset browser, that's great. And again, you get the idea. These are some transitional transition on animations, essentially, for your 2D layers or text or whatever in Red Giant Universe. So if I pick, say, blur slide, I can grab that, and then if I drag across, it's blurring and sliding. Yeah, there it is, blur slide right there, blur slide. And there's all kinds of different channels over here you can adjust with the positioning and the anchor and the duration and all that stuff. You can also do idle animation, which is essentially, again, it's similar to Mr. Horse, where you can have it wobble or shake or spring around or whatever during idling moments, not just transitioning on, but you get the idea. It's a useful motion graphics effect that you can save some time with in terms of bringing on your elements onto the screen. Turn that back off. And like I said earlier, the other thing I use lots of motion graphics, plenty of blurs and glows, and of course the background generators. But I also use stylize a lot, and there's some great stylizing effects here in Universe. I already showed No Light Factory. Holomatrix is one that I use a fair amount. In fact, I use it on the Pixel Fondue bumper. If we take a look at the Pixel Fondue bumper, let me just drag back here, make this full screen, and drag through. All these sort of old video screen effects or VHS effects are from Holomatrix. It's a really powerful effect with a billion options and some great presets to get you started. So as I sort of drag through here, you see you have this sort of LED pixelized look for Pixel Fondue. That's all Holomatrix. And I think there's actually some Universe glows and blurs on there as well. If I go back over here and look at my adjustment layer, let me bing on that, and you'll see that Holomatrix is already on there. So I turn my adjustment layer on, it's going to add Holomatrix, that stylization effect, to everything underneath it. And it just defaults to this sort of dirty broadcast look. Let me just pop this up like that. But if you look at the Holomatrix effect, of course you have, again, the preset browser. And here we've got the Emperor from Empire Strikes Back, it appears, which is great because that's one of the first sort of holograms we all saw as kids if you grew up in the 80s like me. So you can pick your favorite Emperor effect, but you can also grab old bad TV effects, here, more 80s stuff, the Predator effect, night vision, some nice 80s terminal effects, lots of 80s stuff here. There's just me. Maybe I'm just stuck in the 80s. Dot matrix, all kinds of stuff, glitches, and just some sort of color processing effects you can have on footage. All this stuff is great. It's right there in the preset browser. If I grab, say, Dots High Res, I like that guy. So we'll select that and maybe go back full screen so you can take a look at that. You can see this sort of dots look now, and I can dial this back by blending with the original. Maybe it actually works better if I zoom in 200%. You can see the little effect there if I turn that off. No effect. Turn it back on. You see what Holomatrix is doing, right? Gives a cool look. There's a billion different things you can use with different kinds of damage and effects and frame rate. And here's all the different effects. You can add scan lines and colorization and distortion and TV roll and glitches and blocks and all kinds of stuff. Low res settings, scan lines, all kinds of stuff. So you can get that any sort of TV monitor effect you want, you can get from Holomatrix. And again, like normally, like Holomatrix would cost $100 on its own, and all this stuff is for $100 a year when you're adding, putting all this into your value prop equation on whether or not you're going to get something on subscription. So there's Holomatrix. There's just one more I think I'll show before I call it wrap. So let's bounce out here. There's one under distortion that I think is cool called chromatic aberration, and drag that on there, and you can see that it's done some, oops, let me get my text on here. Chromatic aberration is going to be more of an effect towards the edge of the screen. So you can see the chromatic aberration on the text right there, and we can, turn the distortion up or down, maybe 0.75. You see this dirty texture here, like it's through an old lens. You can change that with the lens texture. You can go to bokeh or frozen or salt or smudges. Bokeh is kind of cool. You get the little circles. Bokeh circles. So yeah, you get the idea, right? Maybe the entire adjustment layer. We'll just hit the transparency. I really like this about adjustment layers. You can dial the entire thing back a little bit just with the opacity. And you get the picture, right? There's a ton of stuff you can do with Red Giant Universe 2. It's all GPU accelerated. And in terms of motion graphics, blurs and glows, background generators, and of course all the stylization stuff, there's just a lot of stuff there. And for $100 a month, you got to be kidding me, right? Let's do the math on this. Let's do what I like to call coffee math. This is how I generally decide if I'm going to buy something. If I have a hard time buying something cheap, and all this happened when apps started coming out, and you started looking at a 99-cent app and you started thinking, man, that's too expensive. I don't want to spend 99 cents on that, which is insane, right? So let's break this down. If I'm spending $100 a year on Universe 2, divided by 12, that's only like $8.33 a month. And I spend, I get at least one coffee a day at Starbucks or whatever, and that's $2.50 for a grande with a little bit of half and half. So $2.50 a day for a coffee versus $8 a month for Universe 2. So if I'm feeling bad about spending $100 a year in Universe 2, that's like 3 cups of coffee. And I could skip those on the weekend if I want. Say, no coffee on Sundays, 3 times a month. And I've just paid for Universe 2. So if I'm doing the coffee math on Universe 2, it's totally worth it. Because if I could spend $2.50 a day on coffee, I could definitely spend about 25 cents a day on Universe 2. So yeah, I think it's worth it.
Yum, yum!